No. Thank you for having me.
That's cool,
Pleasure.
mate. So, mate, I'm just jumping in, mate, because we as I say, we don't necessarily edit, and I don't. I did a lot of podcasts where there was a whole bunch of wanky editing of music and fucking bells and whistles at the beginning, and I was kind of like, it was cool, but I think everyone got a bit excited about how cool they could make the intro to the podcast rather than actually getting on with the shit they want to talk about.
Yeah. All the good
So I
stuff.
thought, so you're a handsome man with a good story, and mate, we met because we connected on Facebook, we chatted on the phone, and you've got a bit of a wacko background. You've done some pretty serious shit, and now you're in amazing shape. And the dad bod guys I know love inspirational stories, and they love hearing from guys who've not just survived but thrived, and now full circle for you. You'll come back and you're helping others, and you're giving people kicks up the ass and motivational sort of stuff. So take us back to how early you want to go, mate. You can go from popping out your mum's vagina, or you can go any earlier than that. You can take us back to where it's important for us to know the backstory.
Well, I suppose the best place really to start is 5 years ago, Mike. I found myself on a Tuesday night at around midnight, lying in my bed, gambling on a horse race in Hong Kong, spending the last of borrowed rent money, and with 3 bottles of red wine coursing through my veins. And I sort of had this epiphanous moment where I was like, this is not the direction that I expected my life to end up in. And as I looked down on the bottom left-hand screen of the laptop, there was this phone number for the Gamblers Helpline. And before I could even think about what I was doing, I rang the number and I spoke to this extraordinary woman by the name of Mary, my guardian angel, I call her. And she spoke to me about the massively high rates of suicide that gamblers experience because of how quickly they lose everything, much faster than any other destructive behavior. And it scared the life out of me, Mike. And I was fortunate enough to be put in contact with the Salvation Army, and I got access to these wonderful psychology sessions for a year and a half for free, funded by the Gamblers Helpline. It was the only time in my gambling career that I ever made a return on any investment. And
so, mate, two questions, mate. Did the horse win or lose, or that was your end of your rent money?
Mate, I was a horrendous gambler because after a couple of big wins early on, I was just chasing the dragon. Yeah. And it wasn't about strategy or, if you can have any strategy in horse racing, but it was about escapism. Yeah. And the thing I learned in my very first session was I was escaping as a result of dysfunction that I experienced growing up as a kid, which for me was nothing more innocuous than being a child of divorce. And when I started to learn and understand about these behaviors, it really started to empower me with the knowledge to start the healing process. And as I started to respect who I was more and love who I was more, I wanted to do less and less things that were causing me the most amount of pain. And then I was able to knock the gambling on the head in December of that year. I quit drinking the following August. So it was my 4th year anniversary this year on the 26th of August. What? And recreational drug use, negative self-talk, limiting beliefs, it's all gone. And
you've come good, mate. So go back to that 5-year point, mate. Were you working? Were you a bum? What were you? Give us some context. What was your life like back then when you were hooked on gambling, chatting to Mary, and starting to turn things around?
So here's the thing. I was a functioning member of society. I was a tax-paying citizen. I had a job. I was earning 120 grand a year working in recruitment. And this was the This is the justification that I used for my behavior. I'm doing everything right. I wished friends happy birthday on Facebook. I had functional friendships.
Yeah.
It was horseshit.
And I actually really resonate, mate. I don't resonate with a lot of people, but I actually resonate with that because back in when I start my fucking hero's journey and I do what got me here, same thing. I was a very clever, high functioning alcoholic. I was a busy exec. I had an office in Singapore, an office in the UK. Mate, my shit didn't stink, mate. I was very, very good, but drinking and eating and abusing myself and doing all this shit to cover up but justifying, like you were, that I couldn't be an alcoholic, I couldn't be an addicted gambler because I could still function. And my mindset was I couldn't be an alcoholic because I still run a company, go to work, do this shit, so I can't be an alcoholic. And so you kind of almost trick yourself into thinking I'm okay because I'm living a normal life under, I'm a tax-paying citizen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the illusion and the false narrative that we tell ourselves. And a lot of the people that I used to associate with would use the same, I'm okay, I've got a family, I've got kids, I'm contributing to society. And be that as it may, did not take away from the fact that I was an alcoholic. I was a drug user, drug addict. Like, I was a food addict. I was a sex addict. Like.
I love the saying, the sex addict bit's important because the guys are going to say, Mike, back it up here. I don't know many sex addicts. So without getting, we don't need the details, mate. Just maybe a handful of pictures would be good. But when you say sex addict, you sounded like your whole personality and your whole lifestyle was addiction. Get as much as you can, get the thrill, get the ride. Whether it was conquering women or booze or gambling, that was your rush. True.
Yeah. The sex addiction was more around the seeking validation. So I used to do that through dating. Like I'm now in a really happy, wonderful, committed relationship with my beautiful fiance, which I can talk about in a minute how we met. But I went on 150 first dates in a 4-year period. In 2 of those years, I was in committed relationships. And
is that because you're a Kiwi, mate, with no hair, and the girls just didn't like you, or you're a churn and burn guy?
Oh, I never had that connection with any of the women that I went on dates with. I was really good. I got really good at it, Mike. I was conquering. I was going home and sleeping with the majority of these women on the first date. Like, I saw that as being, really good at this. And of course, as I've since learned, there's no long-term fulfillment that you get out of that. In fact, it's the opposite.
No.
And the reason why is because I didn't really truly love who I was at that time. And I had to get to the point where I was able to actually say, you know what, I actually love who I am. And as soon as you do that, you allow other people to love you.
That's good, man. I like it because it's something guys don't talk about, the sex addiction bit, or the behaviours we have, whether it is sex addiction, whether it's gambling or drinking, it's the behaviours we have to validate the I am enough, I'm worthy to be in this skin. And guys are usually very reluctant to open up and say that I'm addicted to something. And the reason I now understand I'm doing that is because I'm trying to validate my worthiness in the world. So I think it's a good story and it's a good discussion to have, because a lot of guys feel exactly the same way. We do silly shit to validate our mateship, our friendship, our blokeship, our masculinity, but it's not driven from a good place. It's driven by a dangerous place. So then you turn things around. You met Mary. Have you ever met Mary? Have you ever bumped into Mary from the Salvos?
No, I haven't actually.
No?
I think she was based in New South Wales, and I'm down here in Melbourne. But no, I would love an opportunity to somehow thank her for her intervention. I've been able to do that of sorts with the psychologist that I had access to. Her name was Lee.
Cool.
And I was able to get a message across. I don't know whether she's received it or not, but I reached out actually a few months ago and just said I just want to pass on some positive feedback. The impact that she had helped me turn my life around.
Yeah.
And I think just going back to what you're saying before, Mike, as well, that the reason men don't talk about it is because there's a lot of shame associated, a lot of weakness, perceived weakness, and it's the opposite. And as soon as you develop the courage to own all of these failings, your foibles, I don't even like using the word failings because they're not. They make up the fabric of who we are. And as soon as you own all your own experiences, then you regain the power back and you have control. And you have control of your own destiny. And that is a fucking great place to be.
It's a very cool place. I think when you get to the point where you don't really give a fuck who you upset, you don't care about people's opinion, you no longer validate your own worthiness against someone else's judgment tree. When you get to that point, then it's a beautiful place to be where you can say and do and be what you want to say and do and be without worrying how that's going to impact other people. You're not doing it from a bad place, not trying to hurt people. You're just opening your heart up and saying, this is how I feel, this is what I want, this is who I am. And you don't really care how it impacts people because that's coming from you.
Yeah, it's a really important point, Mike. It's really important. And I'll hand on heart. I am far from perfect, and I still have moments of weakness. I still occasionally seek validation. I still say shitty things to myself, but 99% less than what I used to. And I think as long as you are, for the most part, focusing on the good stuff, being positive, then you're onto a winner. We are very flawed individuals. We all are. And that striving for perfection is a frivolous task, in my opinion.
So now give us the next bit of the journey. So you had the Salvation Army psychology thing that went for a while. What started to happen? Tell us how your life changed. Did you stay in the same job? What was the transition you had?
So that was the beginning of the healing, and the healing is like the spiritual, the emotional, the physical, and when the physical started to improve, then the others followed. And I worked for a few other recruitment companies. At the start of 2019, I went out on my own and started my own recruitment business.
Wow.
And I think that was driven. I'd never had an entrepreneurial bone in my body, really. That was just driven from the amount of energy and the vitality that I had, and this testosterone coursing through my veins. And it ended up being a total unmitigated disaster. And I use that term for effect only, because it ended up being the best, the greatest blessing in disguise. And it forced me to figure out what my purpose on this planet is and what my why was, which for anyone that is struggling to figure out what their purpose on this planet is, I can tell you, when you figure it out, it's a fucking great day. And not ever give up hope, because it allowed me to figure out that I wanted to be a speaker, and it gave me my message. I want to share this message of hope, positivity, and inspiration to anyone that's willing to listen to it. And I'm fucking good at it, because I've fucking been through the shite. You know what I mean? I've got some credibility, I got some battle scars, and I can identify with how a lot of people are and how they feel. And for me, that's the greatest blessing of all. And so I've been doing that since last year. Things were about to really ramp up when COVID-19 hit, and all my speaking engagements, like a lot of people's, were just cancelled. And so I needed an outlet to get my message out. And so I created the podcast, which is the one you can see here, the Become Your Own Superhero. And that's been a life-changing experience, interviewing some of the most extraordinary people on the planet, people that are further down the line than me in many areas, that are more developed, that are more financially successful. And that's what you need in order to keep being lifted up and have your cup filled, surrounding yourself with people that will empower you. And that's what I'm trying to do.
All right, so let's pause on the podcast. There'll be some boys who are tuning in who go, I like this guy. He's a straight talker, and they'll want to follow your podcast. So if I was to hook into your podcast, what are the guys going to see? Who do you choose to interview, and what's your style on your podcast?
Well, so the concept around the show is to interview anyone that's a good storyteller, and anyone that's got a message of inspiration and hope. And that includes all the bad bits as well, because the people that have gone through the most amount of adversity seem to have some of the best stories. And so to give you an idea, I mean, my sporting interests, I still play cricket with Melbourne University over here. So, I've always enjoyed the game. It's given me a lot. So I've interviewed a few cricket players on there. We had Justin Langer and Ryan Harris and Chris Rogers and Gavin Larson, for some of the older blokes that remember the New Zealand cricket team. But equally, I've had Mars One astronaut candidates. I've had Les Brown, the motivational speaker. I had Wintley Phipps, who's the Oprah Winfrey's spiritual guide and the guy that sings Amazing Grace. We've had Peter Mitchell from Channel 7 come around to the house. I've recorded 55 episodes since April. I had Kevin Sheedy on recently. I had Alan Fells, the former chairman of the ACCC. extraordinary,
Wow.
diverse guests, all with a different message. And it's a lot of the nutritional stuff. My diet, I only really exist on animal protein for a number of reasons. So I've got a lot of doctors and professors and ruminant nutritionists, forage agronomists that come on can explain the science behind a lot of the stuff that I'm doing. Give me that credibility, I suppose. Very diverse.
All right, so let's good. So let's if the guys are interested, obviously you've done really well and put it on the screen, mate. You've been very fancy and done the information so the boys can find the podcast and follow you. Which it sounds really interesting. You're a good speaker and a good storyteller, so it sounds like an interesting podcast to follow. Let's get back to the food and in Dad Bod we talk about food, movement, sleep, mindset. It's our 4 pillars. Now, I know under that red top of yours, you've got a reasonably good body on you. You're in good shape. You're physically fit. How old are you? How do you? Well, I don't know. I presume, mate, you told me how beautiful you are, so I believe you. How old are you? And give us on the exercise side, mate, the movement side. Fill us in a day in the life of your world when it comes to food, your exercise, movement, your sleep. Fill in the gap so the boys can see what you currently do and how that fits with what they're doing.
Well, I'll show you what I used to look like as of that photo's about.
I think you were better looking back then, mate. You were a bit smilier back then. You look a bit evil.
That smile was hiding some deep.
So it's fair. So it's fair to say, mate, that you've lost a bunch of fat and you're in great shape. True.
So yeah, I'm 40 years old. The total, like I've lost 60 pounds of body fat. I've put on 8.5 kilos of lean muscle mass, and I put on 0.5 kilo of skeletal bone density, all verified through DEXA scans and biometric scans. I've been really, really vigilant with tracking my health, my cholesterol, vitamin D, iron, testosterone, thyroid function, blood work is impeccable. And I even got a CAC scan done last Monday, which is a calcium artery scan, which is the gold standard for predicting the widowmaker heart attacks and cardiovascular disease. And I got a 0, Mike, which is the best score you can get. And I've been eating 97, 98% animal protein for the last 2 years, just over 2 years. And I was doing a keto diet for 6 months prior to that. I sleep like a baby, about however much I need, 6.5 to 7.5 hours. Don't need much more than that. If I'm fasting, less. I started running about 2 and a bit years ago, and I've completed a couple of 100K ultra marathons, which was really unusual because it was something that I had no interest in or no ability. And I feel that my diet has allowed my body to heal, recover, and regenerate way, way faster than it ever could. And so I've been able to build up some momentum. I started running to work, which is where that came from. And I moved from running, the furthest I'd ever run was 5 kilometers. And within the space of 3 weeks, I ran 24, 27, and then my first marathon, which I did in 3:56. And then I ran a 50K 5 weeks later. And then I did the 100 in the September of that year. So from May, July, and then September. And I don't really do any weight. I don't do any weightlifting. I've got a body weight session that I do twice a week. So for what is typically quite a catabolic exercise, running, where it's burning muscle, I've stacked it on in all the right places. And I'm still not in the best shape that I'd like to be, but not bad for 40.
Not bad, mate. Not bad. You've got a few years to go, mate, to get there, but that's okay. You're on a good journey, mate. Just on the food thing for the boys who, when you say 100% animal proteins, your diet, is there cheese? Is there dairy? Is there anything else, or is it just purely meat and salt? Give us the nuts and bolts on your food.
Yeah. So to give some context, I had an autoimmune disease for 17 years, which I was on very strong medication for. I had GERD, the gastrointestinal reflux disorder.
Wow.
For anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's just fucking real bad heartburn every single day, no matter what you eat.
Yeah.
Or so I thought. And I was told by 20 different medical professionals and 2 surgeons and 2 endoscopies that what I had was an incurable disease. So I had to eliminate plants. Originally, it was gluten, which helped with the heartburn massively. And as I started eliminating more and more plants, my gut started healing, and I eat nose to tail, mainly red meat, lots of shellfish, love raw oysters, smash loads of dairy. I go through sort of weird cycles with eggs. If I find a really good supplier that doesn't feed them, I seem to react to soy or the vegetarian feed. I really need pastured eggs. But my tolerance to food has improved through the roof. And I've started to reintroduce things like organic mushrooms, and I might brown off an onion and make it into a bone broth gravy or something for the steak. And pickles and jalapenos and stuff I can seem to handle really well now. And I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I'm not taking any human growth hormones. I take a bit of salt, potassium, magnesium, particularly when you're doing a lot of distance running, particularly as a fat adapted athlete as well. So, and I'm not perfect. I have days where I will destroy a whole liter of connoisseur vanilla, and I will get the beaters and I will beat through a whole family bag of mini flakes into the fucking ice cream. You know what I mean? Like, full disclosure, like, I'm far from perfect, but like I still grapple with some demons from time to time.
That's great, mate. That makes you human, buddy. Now, tell me about the fasting. You're on a 36-hour fast. Tell us how often you fast. Are you an intermittent faster, or are you an extended faster? How does that work?
Yeah, I've done some experimentation, more so last year, where I was doing sort of up to 4 days, just drinking salted water, and a bit of black coffee in the first day or two. But I'm probably more intermittent fasting now. I should do a little bit more. It seems to be really good with my lifestyle. My physical performance goes through the roof when I fast as well. Like, I ran a half marathon distance earlier this year, fasted, and I didn't take on any food or water on the run, just to see how my body reacted. And I think I ran it in about an hour 50, which, given I had no food, was pretty good. So it's more like I don't really eat until 12 or 1 o'clock normally, and have 1 to 2 meals a day. 1 to 2 meals. If you're eating enough, the rule is on this style of eating, if you got to eat until you're full and then eat a little bit more. I suspect that the coffee that I drink, which is sort of 2 or 3 long blacks a day, can dysregulate your ghrelin and the hormones, the fullness hormone. So that's a whole other topic for conversation, but that's sort of what I'm doing at the moment.
All right, mate. And what are your hacks? So in a typical day, I bitch on a lot to the boys about getting a really robust morning routine when they get out of bed, and sort of going through a bit of a process to get the day started, and then in the evening you have that wind down to get decent sleep. Give us an insight of your life. What are some of the hacks for the morning and the evening that you think are beneficial?
Yeah. Well, I run. My meditation is running, and depending on how my body is, I'll run between 30 to 65 Ks a week. I live in South Bank here near the casino. I'm just within spitting distance of the Botanical Gardens, and I make a point of running shirtless, rain, hail or snow, whenever I go around the tan. And I do that for a couple of reasons. 10% show off, but the rest of it is to condition my body. A bunch of the guys would have heard of Wim Hof and a lot of the work he's doing. But also my vitamin D range, I got my blood work done in June, is 5 times the range for vitamin D. And if your vitamin D's high, you won't get sick. You won't catch anything. And if you're worried about catching COVID, which I'm not, and I don't give a fuck, I'll go and catch it on purpose to prove a point if I need to.
You and Trumpy.
Yeah, like you just don't feel unwell when you're looking after yourself and treating your body how we've evolved to function.
So you're a Wim Hof fan, mate. I'm a Wim Hofer. I do Wim Hof breathing every day, and we do ice baths probably, I don't know, maybe three times a week. Are you an ice bath or are you a Wim Hof breather?
No, no, I'm not really. I respect the man's work, and I've seen some of the stuff he's done. But like I said, like my meditation is my running. Like I ran. I was dealing with some family stuff yesterday. An issue with my father, and I was angry for the first time in a while. Just it's actually really frustration at his ill health and his lack of wanting to do anything about it, which I understand is not my responsibility or my burden to bear. But I was angry, Mike, and I was just like, I'm going to run until I'm not angry anymore. And so I ran 21.1 kilometers, and it took me to about kilometer 20 to stop feeling so angry. And so that's my therapeutic stuff. I do some occasional listening to some hypnotherapy tapes that I got. I got some hypnosis last year regarding my sugar addiction, which were really beneficial. So I listen to those occasionally, and take my shoes and socks off when I'm running, go sit in the ground, connect with the earth, and just try and practice fucking gratitude when I can, and appreciate all the amazing surroundings that I'm in. So,
I think that's you've touched on a couple of points, and I think every one of us, I meditate now. I fucking hated meditation; thought it was just woo woo and wank. And now I meditate every day, and I do Wim Hof breathing every day, and I do a bit of ice baths. But I think each of us needs to find that place and space where we can get out of our head and de-stress. Yours is, yours obviously the running. Everyone has their own. But if you don't have that, you don't find that place and space, then you're at risk of going back to some of your bad habits. And it's great once you get it, you know that when the shit hits the fan, when your dad's giving you the shits because he doesn't take care of himself, you can go to that space and you're pretty confident you're going to get out of a dark place by going and doing whatever the trigger is to release the stress and relieve the mind. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the thing, some of the stuff that I've learned with a lot of these conversations on the podcast and just the books that I've read. I was talking to a guy the other day, Robin Banks, his name is. He's a motivational speaker from South Africa. He's quite a large name over there, and he was talking about if you've got a roof over your head, you got food in your belly, and you drive a car, you're in the top 8% of people on the planet. And he just said, that the attitude is the gratitude is the best attitude, right? And if you just go, fuck, maybe life's not so bad, then you get that gratitude and you get that good feeling in your head. And if you're feeling good about being grateful, it's impossible to have simultaneous bad and good thoughts. So if you've got a good one, you can't have a bad one at the same time. Happy to be proven wrong.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense. Well, yeah, no, it makes sense. I think what unfortunately some of the guys in the dad bod groups still struggle with is I talk about the 80-20 rule. That 80% of their success will come from mindset, and 20% will come from the execution of eating well, movement, exercise, getting their sleep sorted. So the practical stuff is really easy. The head fuck stuff is the mindset. What are your tricks? Because you've obviously had to deal with gambling, alcohol, sex, all the addictions. What are some of your mind tricks when you're faced with that 1 litre container of ice cream and you want to trigger yourself to get out of that, or when you don't want to run, or when shit gets real? What are some of your mind tricks or some of the hacks that you use to get your headspace into the game?
Look, honestly, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty damn good without being arrogant. For 99% of the time, there's not much that rattles me these days. I'm very good at just acknowledging what I'm going through. I think I'm getting a lot better at, as time goes by, just going, okay, all right, this will pass. Just own it, deal with it right now. Just experience it. Because I was so used to running away from all of those negative experiences, and I would use the drinking or the gambling or the drugs or the sex to not confront any of those demons. And I think sometimes it's nice to sit with whatever pain you're experiencing and not wallow in your self-pity, but just to go, okay, what's the lesson here? Like this is being sent to me for a reason. So this is a blessing, even though it doesn't feel like it right now. So I would encourage anyone to just to realize that, you know, it will eventually pass. What is the message? What's the reason? Why am I receiving this? Because when I look back at my life, Mike, all of the really fucked up moments in my life are all fuel for the fire that I've been able to use and utilize now. You know, my business failing, you know, my fiance and I are going through multiple miscarriages and an ectopic pregnancy that nearly killed her. You know, like horrendous stuff. But just your ability just to deal with it at the time, focus on what you actually have to deal with, not catastrophizing. You know, and I really honestly feel that I'm able to function at a much higher rate than what I ever used to be, purely based on my diet, purely based on the huge amounts of vitamin B12, the heme iron, all the micro and macronutrients that are coursing through my veins. And then I reward my body with movement. You know, like when I started running, there was periods there when I hit 10 or 11K mark that I inexplicably would burst into tears. And it was like tears of joy. It was really weird. I haven't been able to read much documentation on it. It happened for about a year and a half. And I really feel like it was my body healing. And this sounds really fucking woo-woo. Yeah. But I really honestly feel like it was my body ridding itself of those negative emotions, negative stored emotions that might have been in my fat cells. I don't know. Fascinating.
Yep. I think it is, man. I think one of the things I want to touch on, because you've just nailed it. We're all going to face the shit days. We're all going to do it tough, and there's going to be times when whatever happens, shit happens. And I like to think of it as the react or respond approach. The default is to react. The default is to open the booze, gamble, have a reaction, an instant reaction to get away from that pain, that discomfort, that disappointment you're feeling, rather than, as you've just said, responding by feeling the moment, understanding the pain, understanding the discomfort, not running from it, not immediately reacting, but responding in a practical, functional way. So, like, I feel like shit right now because Dad's pissing me off, or I want to eat something bad, or I want to do something bad, or my partner's had a problem, or whatever it might be. But then responding in a way where you feel that feeling, understand that feeling, logically go through what's causing the feeling, what's the lessons learned, why am I getting this pain, and then responding in a structured, practical way, which is what blokes do really well. We're really good practical cats. We don't necessarily go emotional, but we do sometimes react with the booze, with the drugs, whatever it might be. We react instantly, then we're fucked because we've already done a reaction and we're already started that negative journey.
Yeah. I wasn't really someone that I thought really suffered from mental health issues for a long time. I've always been pretty upbeat, optimistic. If you talk to people that knew me before my, getting rid of all my vices, a lot of them don't seem to notice much of a difference, which for me is really quite astounding.
Wow.
It's really, but obviously other people have said, wow, like what a fucking difference. And I've become the master at talking about my shit. And it's not that I go and unload on poor, unsuspecting people. It's that when people ask me about it, I'll happily talk to them about it. And it's not doom and gloom. It's really positive. And being comfortable sharing all of my demons is part of my therapy, Mike. It's part of my healing process. And when you talk so candidly about what you've been through, people will open up and endear themselves to you in a way that you'll have never experienced. And people connect with me and trust me, and they share other things with me that they've never told other people because they feel comfortable. And particularly when you're the host of a podcast, like that's the ultimate power, right? But for me, it's healing. So like, what is the downside in sharing this information? I divorced, I've got kids, talk about these things, talk about them, but talk about them not in a victim point of view. Talk about them as, okay, this is what's happened and here's how I'm going to go about improving it.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there, mate. I think first of all, the talking about it, then it almost sets the benchmark. You know, when the moment you said the word sex addict, it kind of set that benchmark. Oh, we're okay now to talk about sex. So that's a safe or a conversation that's now acceptable. Gambling, you mentioned the word gambling, so now that can be part of our conversation because you brought it up first. So you've kind of opened the doors to, we can talk about addiction, we can talk about relationships, we can talk about food. You've opened the door, and a lot of guys need that door open for them to know where the safe bit is in the conversation. And then they're quite happy to have to step in and start telling about their own experience. But you've got to open the door and actually invite them in by saying, I was fucked too, I was fat, I was an addict, I did this, I did that. And then they're almost like, that's comfortable now for me to come into that space and share with you what you're doing. And the second thing is when you verbalize it, as you do as a motivational speaker and a podcast host and as I do, we are both selfishly, which is perfect, using our own forums to hold ourselves accountable. Because we can't stand up here and chat and do this, I do this shit, I'm fucking amazing, I live this life, I exercise, I eat well. We can't do that and motivate others unless we actually do it. So selfishly, I'm on this dad bod journey for the dads and for the guys I'm helping. But to actually do what I do every day now, I've got to actually do the stuff that I'm actually talking about. I've got to live a pretty good lifestyle. I've got to eat well. I've got to sleep well. I've got to move well. I've got to have my mind in the game, so it holds me accountable. So the more you talk about it, whether you're actually on a journey yourself, it holds you accountable and gives you that motivation. So it's a win-win, mate. We're on a good gig here, buddy.
Mate, you've absolutely nailed it, in my opinion.
Mate, I do. I think I'd be a prime minister or a president. I think that's my gig.
It's the thing, getting up and like seeing people that don't practice what they preach for me now has become one of the hardest things to deal with. And this is why, you know, like, and it's why it's really important not to paint a false narrative about what's actually going in life. You know, like my finances is something that as a result of my hedonistic lifestyle really suffered. And I've spent the last 5 years working on all the other areas that has been neglected. So this is, my finances is the next chapter in my life. This is my next challenge. And I'll never purport to giving people advice on how to make money until I've fucking done it. And, you know, I'm on that journey. That's my next project, you know?
I think it's what there is the honesty. I think there is a bunch of healers, helpers out there who purport to be good at everything, and they love to create the facade that every aspect of their life is perfect. And really, they might have nailed one or two aspects like you and I have done, but there's a whole bunch of other areas we're still working on, whether it's, you know, jumping inside a 2-litre container of ice cream or whether it's struggling to pay the bills. There are areas of our life that we are still working on, but we're going to apply that same level of discipline and application and determination that we've applied to the successful parts of our life, and we're going to get the job done, and then we can talk about it and we can share with it, but we're not going to start bullshitting to people until we've actually done it ourselves. Yeah.
And I just want to go back a little way. You asked me a question around what are some hacks to help improve. I think the honest thing that really resonates with me, had I known about this sooner, if I'd known about my diet, I would have jumped on that straight away. And I really felt like that. I feel like that would have exacerbated or expedited the healing process. As soon as you get your diet right, like your ability to cope with stress and all the other stuff just goes through the roof. So that's my number one tip. Get your diet sorted and dig around the edges. Particularly this group's great because you've got people doing keto and carnivore and stuff. Don't take what they tell you to eat from the dietary guidelines as gospel, because guess what? It's largely fucking wrong. So just a wee tip.
No, it's a good wee tip, and I think it's the Kiwi in you coming out, the old wee tip. But I think it's good advice. I think a lot of the guys still struggle with the words keto, carnivore, paleo, whatever the names are. They're still under that broad category of diets So therefore, they are a short-term solution. Therefore, it's something that you're on a diet, you're not living a lifestyle. And there's still the guys who really struggle with thinking through that this is a way of eating. It's not a diet, and they need to change their way of eating. And they're not just going to fix their body and go back to the old days. It's that whole mindset around getting a way of eating that works. And the boys still struggle with. I found it with keto and carnivore. The social fucking idiots out there who feel they need to have commentary on your way of eating. When you just eat a lump of steak in front of them, when you load up the fats, when you don't have the carbs, and everyone has their own frigging opinion on that. And there's guys out there who deal every day with struggles of their friends, their colleagues, their family, giving their fucked up opinion. You shouldn't be eating that. That's not healthy. That's not sustainable. And how difficult it is for them to deal with that long term. Even though they're getting results, even though they're feeling good, they're struggling with that public backlash because it's not as mainstream as it should be at the moment.
Yeah. One thing I'd say to anyone watching this is the sooner you can get to a point where you do not give a fuck, the better. I have lost or do not have in my life close to 95% of my former circle of friends. And it's not because they are bad people, is that we have grown apart and I have had to let a lot of them go because they didn't serve me well. And I've gotten really fucking ruthless at cutting dead wood out of my life, including some family. And some people are like, oh, you can't cut family out. Fucking watch me. And what happens is when you cut these people out of your life that aren't serving you well, that are toxic, you allow space for other better people to come into your life. And that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. And it's these family or friends, they are welcome back in your life at any point if they decide to get on board. And fuck them. And when people say to me, what you're doing is wrong, I just say, look at me and look at you, which might sound really fucking grandiose and really arrogant, but there's no denying when you look and feel like $1 million and you look what you've achieved and you just go, and just like the proof is in the pudding. And that's why you're talking about, practicing what you preach. And even for someone who destroys the odd liter of ice cream here and there, you can get away with it when you eat like how I eat. It's easier.
Yeah.
You just can. It's just how the body responds.
Yeah, it's not magic. And it's exciting sometimes because it almost makes you realise you're human when you fuck up and do. I mean, I went on a bender the other week with a mate of mine, just half dozen beers, but it was exciting because the exciting part wasn't drinking beers and doing silly shit, but what it was knowing and being 100% confident that was just a one nighter. We had a few beers for a special occasion, and the next day it was up and back into again, that confidence and that strength to know that you can do that at any time and come back from that and continue this amazing lifestyle and feel amazing, but not have to worry if that was a trigger or you're going to go back to the dark side or you're going to do silly shit again. It's just something you do. And you're quite comfortable and confident. Mate, what I want to just touch on is the family and friendship. I find it amazing, and maybe the same with you. I fucked off a lot of people because, I have the same don't give a fuck attitude as you do. And so there's a lot of people who've gone, you're an asshole, Mike, and that's great because I think sometimes I actually enjoy that because I would prefer them to say you're an asshole and you're a fucking, you're waving the flag and you used to be this and now you're this and you've changed. I prefer them to say that rather than just, have this uncomfortable silence. I find it surprising how many of those people do come back and you fuck them off and you ignore them and they just watch and they sit on the sidelines, especially guys. I've got some mates, and you're probably listening, you wankers, who just went to the sidelines and they looked and they were quiet for a while and they did their little fucking this with their thumbs and they did this sort of shit and they grizzled. And then they came back, and then fucking 6 months, 12 months, 18 months later, they came back. You know what? You were a wanker, you changed, didn't like it, but now we've seen that you've got yourself in good shape and life is pretty good. So help. Give me a bit of help, give me a bit of guidance because I'm ready to jump over.
Mate, it's a great point. And I had a friend of mine who I haven't heard from in 5 years ring me just to check in on me he lives in Queensland and he was concerned about the lockdown. He's not on social media. He hasn't seen any of my shit. We ended up chatting for about 2 hours about what's gone on in my life for the last few years. And he was just absolutely blown away. and he had a problem gambling, and he sent me a message the next day screenshotting that he'd called the Gamblers Helpline and was starting this journey. And I was just like, this is amazing. And what else has happened in my family's life is that my younger brother, who's 3.5 years younger than me, he's got 3 kids with one on the way, lives in the Sunshine Coast. Him and I have always been very close, but he's been sort of living vicariously through me as the crash test dummy. And he's adopted a lot of this information, him and his wife, and the kids are thriving. Both mum and dad have lost a bunch of weight. I got cousins now that are seeing photographs on social media of the change and the marathon running and all the other speaking and all this other stuff. And they're going, what's going on? I got a younger sister who used to be a vegan who's saying, what are you doing? Like, and she's reintroduced red meat to her diet. It's undeniable. It's that lead by example, and you'll gravitate the right people back into your life. And don't ever be afraid of pissing off people that do not serve you well, because you become the sum total of the 5 people that you spend the most time around. If you got 5 people around you, get their salaries and divide them by 5, more than likely that's roughly what you'll earn.
I think it's a great analogy, mate, because we all couldn't easily pull those 5 people into our heads and go, right, whether it's their salaries or their mindset, their lifestyle, their values, if you're the sum or you're the average of those 5 people, for a lot of us, that could be a pretty scary thought until you start to clean up your purple circle and fuck off the ones who don't serve you. And I think the term "don't serve you" is a great term as well, because I think we think of a dangerous, a bad influence. The "don't serve you" bit's important, because that serving you encompasses that moral, that spiritual, that physical, that all the support that we need as friends and mates and family members. If they don't take you in a positive direction, then they're not serving you, and they should be fucked off.
Yeah. It sounds brutal, sounds ruthless, but it fucking works. And the right people will come back into your life when they're supposed to. That's all I can say. I don't regret any decisions I've made at this point. I don't really regret anything anymore. It's all part of this whole, every experience that you go through is simply to prepare you for the next chapter of your life. And if you start looking at things like that, arm yourself with knowledge, arm yourself with self-help books, arm yourself with help, reach out for help, make that decision to ask for help and be brave. Can't go wrong.
And I think I think you're right. If you do it from a place of love and care, then you can't be ever accused of maliciously fucking people off. My philosophy now is everything I'm doing, because I was a selfish prick and still am, everything I'm doing is selfishly from a position of love and care to help guys on their dad bod journey. And if I do things from a position of from love and care, then I can't be held accountable for doing things maliciously or sort of, to better myself. It's because I want to help others. And there will be dead wood. People have to fall by the wayside. People have to fall by the wayside, then come back. And I think that's, if you don't appreciate that's just part of the process, you're going to be tiptoeing around on fucking eggshells for the rest of your life and not saying what you need to say and doing what you need to do. So people like you and I, mate, need to bruise a few people before we bring them back into the fold and give them some love.
Yeah, amen. I'm not even religious. I'm very spiritual.
Now, mate, it's been 45 minutes, and you and I know in podcast land people start to go, fuck you two clowns. I am switching off because you're dribbling on. So I'm going to wind us down, because it's been an amazing chat. I don't want to water it down with some wanky, mate, you've been amazing and it's awesome and let's do group hugs. Some of the stuff you've been talking about is really important. I think the boys are going to love it. Because there's some practical shit in there. What I love is you're a young fella, and I can say that because I'm 55, and I've got a few boys on the podcast who are in their 50s, but there's a bunch of new guys coming onto the Dad Bod group who are your age, and they are success-orientated people. They're in the peak of their career, and they're right at the age and stage where you were when you went, fucking hell, this is, my life's in shit. And I think the younger we can get hold of ourselves by the balls and say, I've got to make some changes, the better, because I'm dealing with guys who are in their 50s and 60s, and that's cute. But when you get to that age, if you've got some seriously bad habits and your body's out of whack, it's a really tough journey. So taking it back to the age where you are, in that 40s age, is a really key milestone in a bloke's life to make some significant changes. So thank you for Thank you for sharing that, mate, because you're appealing to the younger crowd. You're appealing to the young, gorgeous crowd around out there who can follow your footsteps.
Well, man, I'm thank you for having me, and I hope that it doesn't matter what age you are, that you can get some value out of this and live vicariously through me.
Cool.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Go and enjoy your day, mate. Go for a run.
Well, you too.
See you, mate.
See you, brother. Bye.